learning to be present, which I find really hard, learning to be present in the right circumstances, but it's a skill like anything else.
Welcome to Uplift and Elevate. This is our Uplift Her podcast series that shares the courageous journeys of individuals getting an honest look into their life, their struggles, successes, and how they broke down barriers to get where they are today. We are Amy and Christina and believe honest conversations can help give you the elevation and empowerment to write your own success story. My next guest is an author, executive producer, artist, mum, entrepreneur, businesswoman, mentor, and Emmy nominee. Her passion for animation has seen her work extensively across different studios and cities, but her personal mission around people and leading with authenticity is what makes her infectious. For years, she has dedicated time to supporting and uplifting others in what they do. She is Chrissy Metge. So, I am incredibly excited to speak to you today, Chrissy. Our paths have kind of crossed in some of the work that we have been doing. But I discovered after we chatted, like there's so many different like kind of sides to you in terms of what you do and what you have done. And I'm incredibly fascinated for our conversation today. So thank you for joining us.
Oh, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for making this.
So like your background, talk to me a little bit about your kind of background to start with. So you've kind of been an author, you've kind of been in animation, you've got even some awards coming up at the moment.
Yeah, gosh, background. How many hours do we have? No. 20 plus years now. So I did study 3D animation when I left school. It was one of the first classes in New Zealand back then that did 3D animation. I think it was the second class ever in New Zealand at the time. One of 3 girls in the class. So I studied as a 3D animator, and then I quickly learned I really don't like Maya. And and then my first job was actually a 2D animation sitcom called Brotown, which is like the Simpsons of the South Pacific. And my job was actually ink and paint. So it was digital ink and paint, and I could tell my parents happily that I could get paid to color in.
Nice.
See mum and dad coloring in pays off, staying in those lines. But I quickly fell into front of house between seasons, and I really loved the artists and production and helping the producer, and I got coffees and dry cleaning and help invoices and did all of that admin stuff front of house, and just was helpful, and that was kind of it. So I was going to be an artist, and I understand all of the things that artists need to do, which I guess is helpful in my career. But it was production that I loved, so from there on, it was just production all the way through. So. So to this day, I think I've lost count now, not in a boastful way, just because the films keep going. I think it's 15 or 16 films and many TV series and documentaries and many countries, of course. My husband was military. He just left 6 months ago. So my 20-year career in film matches his 20-year career serving his country. And he would get posted away, and so I'd post myself to a film. And we'd meet somewhere in the middle because usually he'd finish his postings earlier, then my film's finished, so he would meet me in random places like the Gold Coast or Singapore, and it was my way of being distracted too from missing him. And eventually we had to, I guess our careers collided and we had to compromise, which we managed to do really well. So he would post and I would hopefully get a job when he posted, and he took some time off from the military for a while for when I was in Singapore, and he's just left 6 months ago, which is amazing, and I feel like he's served his time and he's got another career now, which is exciting.
So he's venturing out into new territories. I was going to say that it's fascinating to think that I knew that your husband was like kind of in the military, and just wondered how you even went about navigating those two like very careers. Like, I know this sounds probably archaic, but they're kind of the traditional kind of image that I have with military wives or partners is that they follow everybody around. But like, incredible that you've almost found a place whereby you are both like navigating the world, doing your different type of passion and service, and you've come together at kind of these key points and made that work for so long as well.
Yeah, it's funny when you're in it, you don't really think about it. Like, you
Mm,
just it was I'm not gonna say it's easy, but the decisions we made were obvious to us at the time. Like, we both supported each other 100%,
mm,
in our careers, and we both knew what they meant to each other. So, we just took turns really, I guess. We just evaluated what that person was doing at that time with that posting and that job, and decided that we both wanted to equally move up the ladder at the same time, which we have actually in both of our jobs. We've both reached that management leadership at the same time. And yeah, and we just knew how much that meant. And I guess those were those conversations. It wasn't his was better than mine or mine was better than
mm.
his. It was just, yeah. So for us at the time, that was always easy, funnily enough. So
Wow.
yeah, strange,
Yeah.
isn't it?
That's like amazing because it's quite often, I suppose that's one of the challenges a lot of people and families face is that if you're
Yeah.
in two both um, senior or like kind of careers that require a lot, like kind of from both like people, that it tends to be quite a difficult dynamic to manage. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I think we've been lucky that way, and, and we're celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary soon, so that's
congratulations.
another milestone. Um, and then, of course, I had my books along the way as well, and the books for me, just started off as a creative itch that I needed to scratch because I am a creative at heart,
Mm,
and I do wear my heart on my sleeve, and I think sometimes people can find that difficult as a leader and a producer where you can be, I guess, what's called emotional, or I like to call it invested, definitely invested in what we do as a creative. And so the books for me, when I had my son, who was a prem, he was 6 weeks prem, so that was hard. And, my husband went off and got posted, I think 6 weeks after my son got home. So
wow.
the books was an outlet really, and I always have the stories in my head, and I work with all these amazing people, so it was just I had time. I had some time to put them out there, and then it just kind of went on and on from there. And yeah, I think I've lost how many books, but I published through Duckling Publishing, and I've got some amazing authors, and I use it as a outlet for IP as
Mm.
well, to test IP in the world with my own stories, and then I pitch that IP to some of these festivals and studios and people like that. But it started out as an outlet, basically, to be a creative, a safe space. So yeah,
Right, it's where that conversion of finding the things that you love, finding what the world needs, and finding like kind of
yeah,
what actually can work or make you money as well. If you've kind
yeah.
of found that sweet spot, then that's an incredibly impressive thing to
Not sure if
do.
it makes money yet, but
Well, it's going to.
no.
Let's put it.
But it's definitely been, a joy. Like, it's my happy place, it's comfortable, I do it with my son now. We write books together.
Oh, that's
I'm
amazing.
making a book series with him. He has these great ideas, and, hopefully I'll release that next year. But just on that journey with him has been really, really fun. I love it, and he gives me this giant list, "Mummy, you haven't written all these books that you were going to write this year," So sorry. He keeps me accountable.
Pay attention. Let's get going.
Yeah.
Well, I think our kids are similar age, aren't they? I think
Yeah,
my daughter's 9, and I think your son is
Hunter's
8.
8, yeah, 8.
Um, so yeah, I will look forward to him
No
making sure
pressure.
that you stay accountable and reading the books when they they come
I'll let
out.
you know. I'll let you know. Hopefully, I'll finish them. It's been a year already, so it'll probably take another year, so yeah.
Cool. So, just kind of thinking back because you've got all of these things going on, which are hugely impressive. Um, but what kind of got you to this point? Like thinking about early context and like
Hmm. Yeah.
where you came from, the things that kind of molded you. What have you got any defining moments that you think
Yeah,
kind of
I
led you
do.
here?
I think I have a lot of parents that come to me and say, I've got this creative child and I'm not quite sure what to do with them, and what piece of advice can you give to help us support our creative kids, especially in New Zealand, and everywhere, and I guess it's not seen as a traditional job. And but I was very lucky. My parents were extremely supportive of anything us kids wanted to do. And my dad had this huge stack of comic books. So I grew up with this huge stack of comic books. I've still got them. He's still got them. I'm talking back in the day, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck and
Yeah.
just the old school comic books, Veronica and Archie and just the stuff. It's all been remade now, but so I had a love of comic books very early on, and then when we watched the cartoons, I realized that you could have a job doing that, and that fascinated me. And I thought, gosh, well, I love cartoons, I love comic books, I love storytelling, and I thought I could be an animator, but I cannot draw. Never have been able to draw. I knew I can't draw. You don't want me on your Pictionary team. I can draw inside my head, but I'm terrible at actually drawing. And so I knew I couldn't do traditional animation, which was all of the cartoons I had been watching and the comic books that I had with my dad at the time. But then when 3D came out, I thought, oh, okay. And I'd already gone to university to study a Bachelor of Computing because there was no 3D program at that time. When that came out, I thought, that's it. That's what I want to do. I want to work in 3D because I can work in this movie cartoon world without drawing. And I didn't even think about being production. That wasn't even a thought of mine. And,
Did you even know about production at that
no,
point?
not at all. Didn't even know that that was a job. I hadn't thought about the people that were running the cartoons. Just thought about the artists that were making the cartoons, and so I just followed that trail. I dropped out of my bachelor. I got to a certain point. I got a certificate, I think, and dropped out of my bachelor, and then went in to do my 3D animation. There was no degree program for it at the time. It was just a diploma. It didn't exist. There was no. Now there's master programs that exist for animation. And finished it successfully, got a highly commended and merit for finishing, and loved it. I didn't like Maya, but I loved I loved the people and the creativity and everything around it. And then when I fell into that first job, and it was just night and day. I just exactly saw where I wanted to be, and just followed the trails. And it, like you say, networking is such a huge thing, and it was definitely word of mouth. So once I got in by a bit of skill and luck, for that first job, like we all do. And then after that, it was word of mouth. Someone told somebody that you did a good job, and then you got that. And especially in small communities like New Zealand, it's a small island. People ask people who they like first. And my husband got posted again to a different space on the island in Wellington, which we all know where Weta is. So after a few years working in Wellington, I quickly got into Weta, and then worked on many, many films in there, and kind of hop back and forth. So it was just following that trail. And I always say to people, just say yes to the opportunities, even though at that time I could have said no. It would have been easy to go, no, that's too hard. No, that doesn't sound like me. I'll give it a go, see how it goes. And that's what led me to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. We and my husband too, we say yes to a lot. And now in this stage in our career, we have started to say no. But I feel like that's a good time to do that.
Yeah. So the family motto has changed from saying yes to now being much more considered, and I suppose you've got
Yeah,
different factors to think about as well now,
absolutely,
with
absolutely.
family and everything. Yeah. That networking piece that you talked about, and like I think we spoke earlier and said that one of the reasons we've been setting up Uplift Her and having lots of these conversations is I think it's women aren't quite often taught how to network or encouraged how to network either. That idea of it being so important to you, but also then how you've managed to navigate lots of different countries as well, because you've worked pretty much all over the world. You've Singapore,
Yes.
kind of New Zealand, the UK. Kind of how did that networking piece take you to these countries as well?
Yes and no. I always say, the people you work with is a CV that travels, right? So,
Mm.
especially in the film industry, you'll work with 50 different countries at one time. That's 50 different connections that you don't know about that go on to get another job, and so on and so on and so forth. You have to make your own opportunities too. So, for instance, my job here in the UK, the first one, not the one I have now, I reached out to a friend of mine that was at a studio and said, I'd done my research and I actually knew quite a lot of people here at the studios. And I said, hey, quite like what you're all doing. How do you find it? What's the culture like? All these types of things. And is there a position? And often you kind of have to give up a little bit to get in. I say this, I've had this talk with students before. If you want to, every time you start in a new country, you probably have to go down before you go up, or
Right.
you go sideways. You kind of lots of the time, depending on your circumstance, if you get relocated for that job, that's different. But I was here on my husband's posting. I didn't have a job at all. So I started low. I started low down and just wanted to get in and have fun and make a film. And then 3 promotions later, 2 years later, higher than what I was when I left. So it's kind of, I think you've got to use those opportunities and the people but you kinda can't just let it happen. You've got to seek it out as well. So everyone knows lots of people, but don't be ashamed to ask them, "Hey, I'm in the UK now. I'm here to work. Are there any job opportunities with who you're with?" So and it's like that wherever I've gone. So I've always seeked out the people that I have worked for before. May not be close friends, but we knew each other, and all they're gonna say is no, right? So it's not like it's so that's pretty much what I've done in most of the countries or places that I've seen. There's been my Gold Coast job, was I put in a CV and, they really liked me and I took the job. I knew people there, but that was a bit of luck, I think, at the time, and them needing someone really quickly. So again, it was that decision. We actually made that decision on Christmas Day. They called me and they were like,
On Christmas Day, they called you.
yep. That's how quickly they needed someone, and it's being able to make those decisions fast and take those jobs. "Hey, we need you in the Gold Coast in a week." And that's like turning our
Wow.
life upside down really quickly going, "Okay, Ken, will this work?" Like
I'm still dressed up as Santa
yeah.
pretending I'm not going in with it.
I was at my parents' house in the middle of nowhere taking this call. And that's how it happens in this industry too. It's very fast, it's very quick.
Hmm.
There's urgent things that pop up all the time. I took my Sydney job was to finish a film really quickly in 5 months. Again, can you come over to Sydney for 5 months to help us finish this film? Can I? Can I? I think so. Wait, give me 5 minutes. So it's just jumping on those things when they happen and making the most of it. It's yeah. So networking is super important, but you've got to lead the witness, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, no, definitely. Where does like that ability to be able to move countries and, like you say yes to things and go like headfirst into different situations and scenarios, potentially with films that have been going maybe for some time and have got their challenges, and you pretty much know now if you're going to be asked to kind of join something, certainly towards the end, it's going to be potentially
I
in quite
see.
a challenging like situation. Um, but where does your ambition come from? Where does your kind of want and desire to kind of want to make an impact on those kind of projects and work with those people?
I think ambition comes from a few things. I've been listening to there's a CEO, I can't remember her name. I've just started listening to her. She was talking about this the other day. Some of us are just born with it. I think
Mm.
ambition is just in your DNA and can get you in trouble because you get itchy and you can't sit still, which I definitely have. I'm an active relaxer, drives everybody insane. I think I've definitely been born with a bit of that ambition, but when I look back on my parents, mum and dad always worked very, very hard. I mean, they're retired now, um, but it was just inbuilt. You get up in the morning, you're early, you have to be early for everything because that's just being respectful to the place you work and the people you work for, which I try and tell my son. um, you turn up, you do the job, and you go home. And the most important thing is that you turn up. You turn up for your team. My dad, he used to set up hardware businesses. So we also moved. So he would set up the business, get it going, hire other people, and then move on to the next one. Set up the business, hire other people, and then move on to the next one. And so we were constantly in the state of starting something and finishing something. Like, and it's those different energies. It's the starting energy and the finishing energy are different. But if you know what you're in for, it makes it easier. It's the unknown that's the hardest. So I actually love finishing a film. I kind of like the adrenaline. I like the craziness, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You know where you're at, and you know that it's going to be hard. So you kind of know that that finishing energy is challenging, but you know what you're in for. So I think the middle spaces I find are the hardest. It's like, are we doing well? I think we're doing well. I mean, all the stats
Yeah.
say we're doing well, but what does your gut say? Which is
And it's
often more
difficult if
accurate.
everything's
Yeah.
so fast paced around you to figure out how to get that feedback sometimes. I mean, lots of companies and the industries and everything talk about kind of feedback, and I think it is quite difficult to understand really where some of that is, particularly if it's project based and essentially a lot of it you're waiting right until the end
Yeah.
to go, yes, it's in the people can see it on screen, like, kind of, and we're all good.
It's definitely a roller coaster, and you try and prep yourself and your team and your family as much as possible. And I mean, my family pretty much know how crazy it gets, and my friends, oh my gosh, it's like I'm going off grid. This is a text sometimes I send. I'm going off grid now. I'm in finishing mode. You're not going to hear from me for the next probably 6 to 8 weeks as I finish this show.
Right.
And they're so great. They'll check in on me from time to time. Don't have to answer. We know you're finishing. So it's like everyone knows the routine, and it's just communication, isn't it? Hey, this is
Mm.
the bit where it gets hard. I'm not gonna be able to communicate as much. I'm forewarning you now. Still thinking about you, but so it's just trying to let everybody know about the crazy before the crazy, and it doesn't make it less harder, but at least everyone knows you're not ignoring them for reasons.
And how have you navigated that? Look, I understand the friends kind of part, saying, "Look, I will come up for air in a bit, but I can't be around now." But having a family is a different dynamic, particularly having
Yeah.
kids and stuff. How have you navigated that?
Oh gosh, it's so hard, isn't it? I mean, especially with COVID.
Mm,
My son was 4,
yeah,
um, 4, almost 5 when COVID hit, so he made, the last film I was on with me. So, and the half of the one before that. So it was kind of he was, here, and my husband still went to work with the military. The military doesn't stop in the
no,
pandemic. It actually gets busier. So he was home with me the whole time, and we're quite similar in personalities. I think I'm lucky, one of the lucky ones, and with Hunter, it did work really well, and I actually enjoyed that time having him around and having him here, and so he's quite used to me working at home or working in the office, and I think because he's grown up with it, again, just explaining to him what I do and what I need to be there for. It doesn't make it less hard, but I guess he's kind of used to it in a way. But it's a boundaries thing and communicating thing. And for me, I had to set like brain space boundaries too. If I'm picking him up from school, I have to
yeah,
take 30 seconds and go, okay, I'm not producer mummy anymore. I'm mummy. I'm going to take that
yeah.
hat off and put this hat on. And
Like,
I
shake
needed,
it off,
yeah,
like, you
yeah,
know,
needed to make that swap so that my mind is ready and fresh for him and what he's going through. And because it's hard as an ambitious person, you feel itchy, you want to check your phone when they get home from school and go back to that call or whatever those things are.
Mm,
Was learning to be present, which I find really hard, learning to be present in the right circumstances, but it's a skill. I'm a big fan of routine. So we have our routines together, but obviously it gets thrown out the window with so many things. But all we can do is our best. We can
yeah, I think that's pretty powerful, though, isn't it? To think that it's not it's not necessarily the volume or the quantity of
Mhm.
time that
No.
you have with kids, because I think certainly navigating kind of mother's guilt or parent guilt or whatever guilt that we all kind of have to contend with. Um, but yeah, thinking that actually, even if it is for shorter periods of time, actually that like personalized one-to-one dedicated time is actually more powerful than just thinking you're around a lot but you're distracted by lots of things, and that action of
Exactly.
being, like you said, that skill of being present is something that we kind of have to practice in a lot of things, not only
Mhm.
with kids and like family life, but also even at work, like the amount of things that we all get distracted by. You got messages pinging up and all of those. And I think that's actually one of the skills that we all need to learn much more, even since COVID.
It's
That,
true. Everyone just thinks you're accessible all of the time now,
yeah,
because before it was just at work, but now you can work from home, and which is, great or not great. Everyone finds it differently. But you're online, you're accessible. There's no boundaries anymore. So I think in a new way we have to set our own boundaries, which is really hard. I find
mm,
that really hard.
and hard to stick to them. Sometimes it's
Yes.
harder to set them, and it's a lot harder to stick to them.
I'm better at doing it for my team than myself, but
Yeah.
I'm definitely getting there. And yeah, it's learning how to be present was definitely a turning point for me. That's been really, really helpful since having Hunter, and just being mindful of his time. Like you say, it is quality, definitely quality of time as opposed
Yeah,
to all of the time. And he doesn't want me around all the time anyway.
it's true. They get to an age where they
Yeah.
would rather not. So thinking about your whole career and all of the different like aspects, if you were to summarize your career journey with two highs and one low,
Gosh, it's hard.
how would you do that?
Um, the people, absolutely, undoubtedly, the people have been the absolute high. So,
Mm,
the people in this industry are just so incredible, so incredibly talented. The teams I've had on my shows and shows that I've been on are just so giving. They just are so passionate, so creative. It's it's just really amazing to be part of building something, and, these films take a long time. Sometimes it's 3 years, sometimes it's 2 years, nothing less usually than 18 months,
yeah,
and you're part of people's lives for that amount of time. So, and I respect it and I don't take it for granted. So the people have been an absolute high for me, still are. Um, you know, and the travel, absolutely, the industry provides a lot of amazing travel opportunities, and seeing the world is something that my
have you
husband
got a
and I
favorite
share.
country?
Oh, I cannot say. Cannot say, but I just went to Greece recently. That's a beautiful place.
Yes, very nice
Um,
there.
and home is where your heart is. It's
Yeah,
not a place. I don't have a place where I grew up. People always find that really strange. People go, "Where are you from?" I find that hard too. I'm obviously from New Zealand, where I spend a lot of my time, but, from is a hard one to say too, because, I kind of live where my family is or what I'm in my now. So if your heart is here, then it's here. So, but I've got friends and family all around the world, so it's a big pot. So the travel and the people have been definitely two highs. The low point, I think, is obviously COVID was a huge low point, for not from well, for me personally, but also for the team that I was on and the show I was making at the time. There was a lot of people that were sick, and, it wasn't the great circumstance. I'm sure everyone's got those stories, but it was just so hard to watch people suffer. And the film we were with the show we're making at the time is help people through that, and
mhm,
that was and our bond through that now is crazy strong, because you were so in depth in people's life and the bond, and you helped people through a crisis situation by making entertainment like that. That's crazy to think that at that time that show kept people getting up in the morning. And I asked my team at that stage, I'm like, "What can I do?" I don't know how can I help? And they said, "Chrissy, just keep turning up. Just keep turning up, because we turn up because you turn up." And I was just touched by that, and I never even thought of it that way. But, it's what my dad said, right? Going to
being
work,
there.
just turn up, you know? and you don't realize the effect you have on people. You're just turning up and you're doing a job, but it's more than that. You're there to build something, and you're there for a team, and it does have an effect. And it's when you're in it, it's really hard to see, but people will stop and tell you if you give them the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Navigating some of those challenges as a leader, though, is pretty. Like you said, you've everything that you talk about is around people. Like the very fact that you say you haven't really got a home unless it's where the people that you love are, and that could be any space, like kind of as long as they are. But then taking that into the work context and leading a team of people that you form these huge connections with, and then navigating those challenges. But how do you navigate like challenges yourself? Because it's one thing trying to navigate, helping your team navigate them, and then there's another thing, I think, of trying to navigate your own challenges. Has there been a bigger challenge than COVID? And like, how did you personally approach that as well?
I think walking on that career ladder and rising up, there's not many females in
Mm.
this industry. I'm an executive producer now, and there's not many of us in the animation industry. And I think that comes with lots of challenges, not just being a female, but just in general having that role. And, we've talked about this before. It can be lonely, and you don't have anyone to really talk to just about challenges, and you find days going, wait, is that the right thing to do? I'm not quite sure. um, but it's seeking out that community and asking those questions and being very transparent. So the way I work with challenges, which is a lot, and it can be a lot for people, is I'm very transparent. So I'm the
Mm.
first one to say I'm not okay. Like I'm not okay today, and it's okay to say that. And I have team members asking me that, Chrissy, are you okay? No, I'm not okay today. All
That's
right, well,
setting
what?
an example, though. It's really hard. I think
It's really hard. It's
we are
really
quite often as leaders ask people to kind of say, but if you're not prepared to say when you're not okay,
Yeah.
it's it's kind of almost, well, people emulate other people's behavior, but if they don't see the leader, if you want, kind of doing that, then it doesn't create that safe space, does it?
Exactly, and it's easy to think, "Oh gosh, why did I say that? I feel guilty now. I shouldn't have said that I wasn't okay." It's easy to think those things, but we shouldn't be apologetic for that. And I'm not apologetic for being transparent, and I'm the first to say I'm not okay, or we're not doing great, but let's work together on a solution.
Mhm.
Like, our team's not doing well, let's figure it out. Like, and I think that starts communication by being vulnerable, and we need to be vulnerable. We need to be I'm not saying we need to chuck in all of the toys and throw out our cot and do tantrums and everything like that. We're professionals, but we need to be vulnerable and say when we need help and when we're not okay. And you'll be surprised what people do. And also, if people are not supportive when they do that, then you also know what you're working with, and maybe that's not the right space for you. So I think it's hard when I'm challenged, of course, like everyone else, but the first stage is to accept that you're challenged and accept that it's not okay, and then it's easier to move forward, I think, after that. If we just ignore it and bottle it in, it just gets worse. It really does.
And then on the flip side, how, because obviously you've done all of these projects and there were lots of successes, but sometimes it's quite easy for us to kind of go, well, that's done, and compartmentalize it and move on incredibly quickly as well, onto the next thing, onto the next shiny kind
Yeah,
of
it's true.
shiny
Next.
project that's going on, especially if you're, like you said, your deep rooted passion around kind of the creative and those sort of thing, and having that desire to kind of want to kind of do work around that. How do you celebrate successes and make sure that you get the recognition that actually you deserve as well?
It's hard, isn't it? Not very good at, celebrating myself. Bottle of bubbles. No, it's true. You do have to take a step and do it. I'm lucky enough. I've got such a very supportive family. My husband is way better at celebrating me than I am. So, he will acknowledge it and probably book a dinner and things like that. But you're right, we do have to really do it more. We do have to do it more. And with the recent show that I finished, I've been invited to the Emmys, and
Amazing.
but to get there is not an easy thing.
Oh,
You have to, again, like, initiating that job that you're after, I had to initiate that. So even though I worked on the show and it's got nominated and everything like that, I rang them up and said, "Hi, my name's Chrissy. I got nominated for an Emmy. How do I come?" And they're like, "Oh, well, you need to become a member." I'm like, "Well, how do I become a member?" And they're like, "You've got to fill out this form, and it's your mother's, grandmother's, cat's dog,
bureaucracy even to get the award, like.
your mother's, father's, cat's, daughter's, husband's dog needs to say you're amazing, and then you go up into a board, and then they approve you." And then I was like, "Wow, I didn't." And then I was like, "Then can I get a ticket?" And they're like, "No." So then, so I think you've almost got to fight for your successes to celebrate them as well. I think we can't just move on to the next thing. You've got to actually make space and decide to celebrate it. You know what I mean? It's like if you don't hold your birthday party, no one's going to make it. Well, some people will probably hold a surprise birthday party for you, but there's just certain things you've got to actually initiate, and people will follow and come celebrate you. But you've got to lead them.
Yeah. It's hard though, isn't it? Like, I think particularly in the industry that you're in, people celebrate as a group, like kind of
Yes.
the ending of a project. And I think it's so important for us to recognize the journey that we've gone on, the challenges that we've been faced as individuals, not necessarily just as a group, and to not downplay, particularly like you're saying, you're a woman that's in an industry that there aren't many in your position. There aren't many that are that senior and have got to and have navigated their career in the way that you have done that. And not only have you navigated your career in the way that you've done, but you've got all of these other things that are going on as well. You've got businesses, you've got your kind of, like we said, the books that you, and you being an author as well. And I think that even acknowledging that in itself and saying that actually we did good, like kind of is, like you said, it's a hard thing, but
Yes.
the challenges we also going back to that emulating behaviors in terms of not only when people see challenges but also when they see successes. Hopefully, if we have people like you in position of power and kind of people look up to you in your career, seeing women openly celebrate themselves, then actually it will encourage other women to do the same as well.
It's true, and I hadn't thought about that, but I like celebrating, so we
Good.
should do a lot more. And I think because of the last few years has been really difficult for everybody,
Mm,
um, and the industry has been really difficult with the strikes and everything that's gone on. And I think maybe we've all gotten a little bit used to things not being okay a bit as well. And I think we should all uplift each other,
mm,
um, and make it better, even if it's not okay, because having that community makes a difference, doesn't it? So
definitely. I wondered if, and maybe this is through my own kind of personal experience, but the competitive nature of the industry also stops us, like, not wanting to kind of shine a light. That's certainly one of the challenges that I found, is that actually when I was in an organization, not really feeling like I could ever reach out to other people that are potentially doing similar jobs, because actually that would seem like that you are fraternizing with the competition. And I'm not even saying that it was
Mm,
explicitly said, but there was certainly lots of implicit messages, and even kind of women not really wanting to put themselves out on
mhm,
social media or comment on things or celebrate kind of other people's successes unless they were directly working on a project within a certain company, and then that would happen. But actually our careers are so much broader than that, and I'm not quite sure
mm.
how we navigate around that.
Yeah, it was a turning point for me. A friend of mine, an author friend of mine with me, she's also in PR. She's an incredible, incredible woman. And she said to me, Chrissy, you need to rethink about yourself. And I said, what do you mean? I'm like, yeah, you're Chrissy the mum and Chrissy this and Chrissy that, but you're also a brand. In New Zealand, as a creative, you're automatically a contractor, a freelancer. So you're in charge of your own brand. No one is ever going to help you with that. And I was like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. I hadn't thought about Chrissy, the brand, which is a weird concept. I sound like Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
But she's like, "You take off put that hat on." Like, they don't need to know all about the stuff in your house, like, all of your you choose what to share in the world. You choose what the world sees and the brand that you choose to be in the world. I was like, "Okay, that's really interesting." So, she changed my mindset on that, and so this is what I also teach to I do a masterclass here in, London at, an animation school. I teach at the masterclass, and I teach about we're trying to find you as much as you're trying to find us. So I'm trying to find all of these artists to hire for my current film. I've got my film will get to 250 people that I'm currently on. How do I find you if you're not a brand to be found? How do people market yourself? You've got to help me find you. And it was the same with me. So and it's and that way you can control your narrative, right? So you can be in control of that, and build your brand. So when I went back to New Zealand last, I had all of these I felt ridiculous, but I had all of my photos taken by a friend of mine who's an amazing photographer, Tabitha. She's got her own photography company. So I'm in charge of putting all my own photos online. If studios want to post things about me or social media or official things, I give them the photos
Mhm.
and I approve those before they go online. My own website is built by me how I want it. Um, you know, you try and control your narrative and your brand as much as you can, and in that way you can disassociate yourself from everyone's going to be there's going to be competition. That's just how the industry is going to be, and people are just going to be nasty if they want to be nasty. um, but if you just stick to you and your brand and your voice and your reputation, it precedes you really, because I try to not be a horrible person to work with. I try and respect everybody, and after a while your reputation speaks for itself and your brand speaks for itself, because it's just there and that's just what's there all the time. And that makes it easier to wear that hat. It's like, oh, it's not me, Chrissy, the mum reaching out. Is Chrissy the brand? Or Chrissy that's what reaching out. If you can put the different I had one person that put a coloured sock on, a different coloured sock, and that was their way of separating themselves, to cold
Identify
call
them.
or cold email out going and emailing their CV, which people find really hard to do, is to send out their CV sometimes to studios, and that rejection is really, really hard to receive.
Yeah.
So it's just easier to break off those parts of yourself and think, no, this is Chrissy the brand, and this part of person might see me as competitive, but that's because of the stature in the industry, not because of Chrissy over here that loves cats. So
Yeah. I think also like just being a little bit braver as
yes,
well.
true. That's true.
And
Getting out of your comfort zone.
yeah, I mean, I tell you, trying to set up Uplift Her has been a learning
Oh,
curve in
come on.
itself, and everything that we do gives me a certain level of anxiety. I've
Bet.
gone from not posting anything and absolutely hating any form of social media and all of that kind of stuff
Yeah.
to having, but actually kind of almost taking yourself out of it and recognizing that actually, as long as we are celebrating kind of things, and like you said, there's absolutely no reason, and it doesn't mean it's competitive. Like celebrating other people
No,
actually
celebrating other people's
is a
things.
real positive thing for
Such a
you,
positive
as
thing.
much as it is for the person that's kind of receiving this as
Well,
well. So I think,
it's so satisfying. So in my last show, every single production person got promoted, when they left the show
oh,
or during the show,
brilliant.
and that was, a target of mine, like a goal for that to happen, and I'm truly proud of that, almost more proud of that than finishing, that and then they move on and do these great things, and that's what you want. You want
Yeah.
them all to be great and move on, and hopefully they get to change someone else's future and, pass it on. So
Definitely. Um, So, what has been your approach to managing your career?
Um, I guess when you're just doing it, it's hard to think that you're managing it, but of course we are. I think it's being conscious of what you're doing. And it is work. You have to manage your career and be a brand. So it's being conscious of that and thinking ahead. So right now, I finish my current film in September. I'm always thinking after that. So it's like, well, what am I going to do after that? When do I start putting feelers out for the next one? You
Not
have to think,
waiting type thing.
you can't wait. You can't wait. Have those networks ready to go. Have your branding ready to go. Tell everyone when you're finishing. Start, you know, be there in front of people. Don't be out of space, out of face, out of mind, all that kind of thing. You've just got to always talk about what you're doing. You don't have to talk about yourself, but talk about what
Mm,
you're doing when you're doing it. I think that's really important, letting people know you're still around, all that kind of thing. You do have to be present these days online. You do have to have a presence in our own life at family, but you still have to have a presence in your career. If you want to move up, you have to get out of your comfort zone and create that presence for yourself, and get yourself known and do extracurricular activities that you care about within the
yeah.
industry. And you do have to give back. Like that's part of climbing that ladder. And I think we should all give back. That's part of being a leader and in the community. That's why I do the master classes and
Mm,
I teach soft skills and do all these other things within the studios and stuff like that. And I think that's just part of our responsibility as well, because you can't just be a leader in your job. We need to be a leader in our career, right?
in a
So
sense, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I suppose it's like not being a passenger to your own
no,
career, isn't it? It's
yeah,
like,
and
how can you
you should want it and enjoy it and want to do those things. If you don't, then you're in the wrong career.
well,
It's,
I think the challenge though sometimes is that it just because you join an organization and either whether it's in the industry that you're in or kind of or other industries, it's quite task based. You've got a mission to do. The mission is kind of short term, but always keeping an eye that your career is not short term. And like you said,
no,
doing all of these things, not only the work that you're currently doing, but also the soft skills and the master classes, that's you diversifying your ability, which brings so much value back to you as an individual, but also to the organizations that you work for as well.
yeah, and I love it. And when I was young and coming up through, there wasn't a community. I mean, there wasn't. It had only just started.
Mm.
It didn't exist, and I just think, gosh, imagine if I had the me when I started to talk to about where I should go, what I should do,
Mm.
or what even jobs that there were. How amazing would that be? So in a way, I want to give back so that the me's of the future have someone else that they could talk to and pick ideas for and just maybe see their path earlier, and plan their brand.
Yeah, definitely. Have you got a career practice that you do?
Career practice, what's that? Like
So,
a
like, I don't know, one woman that we had on one of our previous podcasts, she was like, every 6 months, I rewrite my CV because it's not about me looking for a job or anything, but actually it helps me
yeah.
articulate what what I've succeeded in and kind of how to present myself. And that's one of her things that she kind of encouraged other people to do. And I just wondered if you had a practice at all that
Oh,
you
that's a
think
good
helps
idea.
your
Well, I it sounds corny, but I still do the end of year goals. So,
Mhm.
at the beginning of the year, there's one book. It's not used for anything else. So, in the book, I have separate pages. So it's like family goals, career goals, book goals, and there's one that's the extracurricular ones. It's like be on more
Yeah.
podcasts or
Yeah,
um,
right.
go to some more festivals or these are the books I want to write this year. And it doesn't matter if you don't achieve them all, but again,
Mm,
it's putting from your head to paper. I still like paper for me. What I want to do. So I do that with Hunter as well. So I do that with my family too. Like, what do we want to do this year? Like, what are some things that we want to book in the calendar? Do we want to travel in 3 months? That kind of thing. So that's I quite look forward to that, and then I look back at all the ones from last year, but I do it in the middle of the year as well. So, um, and so it's for all those hats that you wear. I have a goal page for each hat. So it's like, so for my branding hat, for instance, for Chrissy their brand, what would I like to do for Chrissy their brand? Last year at this time, I joined. It's called Brains Magazine. So I became a contributor to that, and so
Oh,
write articles.
amazing.
So I got out of my comfort zone. I'm like, how am I going to do this? But so I've been writing articles for that magazine all year as I have time, and that's been a brand new thing for me. I've never done that before. So it's that kind of thing, searching out maybe another challenge that makes you uncomfortable. I feel like over the Christmas, New Year's break is a good time to do that too, or when you take a holiday. Seeking out things that make you uncomfortable but is good for your brand or whatever one of your hats is. So yeah, that's definitely something I do.
And they do get easier, those things that you do. And I think it does, like you said, seeking out the things that make you uncomfortable. But also, if you can build, whether it, like you said, it's your tribe or your community or kind of a group of people around you, like, then it becomes easier
Yeah.
because you know that people will vouch for you or have got your back, or kind of like that's a different dynamic. If you don't kind of foster those relationships, then it does become really isolating. And I think unfortunately that's what we're taught quite a lot. And
Mm.
certainly feeling isolated is one of the things that I think probably holds a lot of people back.
I think so too. And, it was hard within those last couple of years, the isolating thing. But I think, again, reaching out and telling people you're not okay or need support,
Mm,
there's so much support. There is actually a lot, and I think you'll be surprised who answers. That's the other thing.
definitely.
There's a lot of mentors and coaches out there. I've been doing, luckily enough to be accepted. So the last 3 months, I've been doing the Women in Animation
Hmm.
official mentoring with my group. And these group of women have been incredible. And even though I'm supporting them and it's my mentoring session, they're giving me as much support. And it's
Both
been
ways, isn't it?
it's both ways, and it's just been yeah, so fun. And yeah, we've all gotten so much out of it. So I think sometimes when you are getting out of your comfort zone and it feels like maybe you're not sure, it can be one of the best things to do is reaching out. And I think we forget that if we don't reach out, people don't know that you need it. So it's just that letting that witness thing, and it's really hard to do that. It's really hard to reach out. So we've just got to encourage each other to do that more. And I bet you'll be so surprised at who will respond and want to help.
Mm. Um, you talked earlier about being a female, a woman within the industry and the work that you do. Um, what are the things that you think hold women back?
I get asked. There's two questions I always get asked when I do talks, and it could be like a young audience of students in their first year, or even at festivals of really advanced age, and it's always, how do you get paid?
Did you get
um,
paid? Well, that's
yeah, do you get paid well? And how do you do it with a family? Like, should we give up family? So it's an important thing to talk about and navigate, and it's I think you've just got to do it. Just keep doing it. You can do it all, but you just can't do it all at the same time. So
Hmm.
it's just being honest with yourself about what you can and what you can't do. And just because you have a family doesn't mean you can't have a career, or just because you have a career doesn't mean you can't have a family. So it's just navigating and deciding what your boundaries are really and what you want to go for. What's your absolute dream is one of the questions that people find hard. Like, if you could decide tomorrow what your dream was, what would it be? And then what are the stepping stones to get there? And take that stone first, and then take the next stone and the next stone. Don't go, I'm never going to get there. It's like, well, no, you're not going to get there. You got to do the stones. So, I think we can't be in a rush. We've just got to take each stone and step as we can, and do it day by day, really.
And talking about stepping stones, what's next for Chrissy?
Oh gosh, that's hard. I think, I have one of these rules in my life. When my crew hits 100, I start peeling away from extracurricular activities and extra social activities. So my crew, we've gone over that now. So those are my boundaries, to know that I can't do all of those things at the same time. So I will be going into that focused land of work soon, into the train. So all my eggs will be a lot of in my basket for this film I'm on. It's an amazing film, and for my team for the next sort of 6 to 8 months.
Yeah.
So I'll be in there doing that, while having my feelers out for after that. And as I say, I want to finish this book series that I'm on for my son before he holds me accountable.
Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Me
You've
too.
enlightened me, and kind of I've loved finding out a bit more about you as well.
It's been amazing, and what you're doing is amazing, and we need more of this. So we need more.
I think, like you said, I think we all need a community, and I
Mhm.
think communities kind of come in lots of different forms, and hopefully we can collectively share a bit that all helps us to navigate our careers a little bit more easily, and together as well. I think that's the objective. Is that but doing it as a solo event is
Mhm.
incredibly hard. Like kind of doing it as a collective and working with all of these different people, whether it's simply just getting inspiration or ideas or sharing a space where we can kind of support each other, just completely changes the way that we all feel about our careers.
Exactly. And when we've got that community, we can help each other, and it's easier to pass it on. If you hear about a job and you know someone, just let them know. It's better that way, and it's more fun. It's
Yeah.
more fun sharing it together. Otherwise, you'll just be at home going, "I did something great today," and then it's more fun as a community, and celebrating each other's successes.
Well, I appreciate you joining us today.
Yay! Thank you. I loved it.
Thank you for listening to Uplift and Elevate. This episode was with Chrissy Metge. Our goal at Uplift Her is to develop effective and lasting change by focusing on building a strong community, providing essential career development resources and effective mentoring programs. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, follow us on Instagram, and reach out if you're interested in getting involved and learning more about our work.